Welcome, welcome, welcome. My name is Jay Rosenthal. I'm the co-founder of Cultivated Media, the host of this program, which at Friday mornings is called Reporter's Notebook. And we are here on Cultivated's feed, on LinkedIn, and on YouTube. And since we launched Cultivated, our goal has been to be cannabis industry first, providing you with the most important, insightful, useful, and timely information. We do that every day through our daily newsletter, which is Cultivated Daily. We do that through a daily live stream, which you are seeing now. So follow us on LinkedIn, subscribe to us on YouTube, and get our newsletter in your inbox every single day. You can find it at cultivated.news. On Fridays, we are joined by one of the intrepid members of the MJBizDaily team. Today, you drew the short straw, I guess, Chris. Chris Casacchia, nice to see you.
Good to see you again, Jay. Great to be on again.
I look forward to having you on because some of my favorite topics we're going to get to today. Last time you were on, which was maybe 2 weeks ago, you talked about things that were on Gavin Newsom's desk in California. Of course, he is the governor. He was, I don't know, looking to sign or bills had passed. Was it a win, a loss, or a mixed bag for the industry?
Well, I think we can almost always say it is never a complete win for the industry. There are always bills out there that Newsom could have signed, help the industry, but for various reasons, he did not sign them or veto them. There are definitely a couple of W's, though, that the industry could put up.
That's good.
Session. Absolutely, of course.
Let's get to the good news first, I guess.
Yeah, so I think that top of the line, I think there's really kind of two major wins here. The first is cannabis cafes. We've been talking about really kind of diversifying revenue streams for retailers and consumption lounges for quite some time here in California. There was a similar bill proposed by Assemblymember Matt Haney last year that would essentially allow consumption lounges and retailers to sell non-alcoholic beverages and food options. For whatever reason, Newsom vetoed that last year. This year, it was a very similar bill. It will pretty much allow those same, provide those same allowances to retailers at large, and as well as consumption venues. Of course, it's still kind of a developing scene, the consumption scene. Most of the consumption places here in California are located in West Hollywood. But you can definitely see that this certainly opens up the door for new business, needed business for retailers and venues across the state. There is, of course, a caveat, like there is in almost every single piece of legislation. And within California, everything has to be locally approved. So, of course, that is, a potential obstacle in some municipalities across the state. If you look at another W, I think it's a pretty substantial one, and this is something that Stephen Bradford, an assemblyman around LAX and South LA, has been fighting for quite some time. And it's this idea of eliminating double taxation when it comes to the retail level. So SB 1059 would essentially end double taxation at the retail level by amending the definition of gross receipts. This is another big win for retailers who have been really kind of bemoaning the way this system is in California, where you're essentially taxed at numerous levels throughout the the government chain, county, state, and local. So this is going to alleviate that, so that hopefully should free up a little bit of cash flow for retailers. And there's a couple of other bills that were signed by Newsom. It's going to be interesting to see kind of how this plays out. One of them, SB 1064, would essentially create a combined activities license, which would allow the state to license 2 or more commercial cannabis activities within the same property. And again, this, when we're talking about licensing and DCC, there's always questions of concerns of, when will this occur? How will this occur? Because as we know, almost in any regulated market, licensure is just a long kind of tedious process.
Yeah. Okay. So those are some of the wins and maybe wins, right? With the one where we'll see how it's being implemented, but those seem like good wins. Yeah. I remember you saying the state fair last year in California had
this year
cannabis on site. Yep. Great. But there was a bill that I think would have allowed more than that. Does that go in the L column?
Yeah, that's a big L. Unfortunately, a lot of cultivators, small farmers are really hoping that Newsom would sign AB 1111, which would essentially establish a small producer event license that would allow small farmers to sell their own cannabis and cannabis products at temporary events directly to consumers. Again, this would have to be okayed by local municipalities. But what's interesting here is that, this bill was actually an extension of a bill that allowed retail for the first time in its history at the California State Fair just, a few short weeks ago. But Newsom, basically his vetoing reasoning was it was just a little bit too gray. And he said that it would potentially undermine the retail licensing system and also the ability for DCC to enforce and regulate the new law. Of course, there's an argument that you can easily make that, the system has been undermined, for quite some time, maybe even since it launched.
Well, I wonder how much booze is there at the state fair.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Of course. And that's another thing that I think we constantly are wrangling with in the industry is that, for one reason or not, we are just not provided, the same allowances that other industries have enjoyed, essentially for, most of their being.
Yeah. And that's nothing to say that those industries have deeper pockets, bigger lobbies, more influence, and operate in more communities than cannabis does, which is not unimportant in any state, but certainly in California, it's not unimportant.
Well, I think you also, those industries just have so much more lobbying power and influence. I mean, if you look at cannabis laws in California, every year that I've been covering this industry, Newsom has essentially waited to the very last weekend to veto or approve bills. And that should give you some inkling or inference into kind of where cannabis is on the priority chart. Obviously, we're a gigantic state, one of the largest economies in the entire world. But, we also believe that California should be leaders in cannabis, and the influence in Sacramento and within his administration, cannabis is just not there. Thank God we do have some assembly members like Matt Haney, who has been fighting for, expanded rights and allowances for businesses, since he's been there. And of course, Stephen Bradford, who has been really kind of been one of the main industry advocates that we have in Sacramento. And there are not too many of them, unfortunately.
Let's build more.
Yeah.
Let's get people on board.
Yep. We need, we need folks to somehow enter the picture, the legislative picture, like we've had in other industries where grassroots has kind of, risen them into some influence and power.
And it's tough. I mean, it's tough in every market. It's tough in places that have had a challenge and go of it to say, we want you to run your business. We want you to run it successfully. You're busy doing that. And if you don't mind, come to Sacramento for 3 days to lobby the state assembly here in California. It's really hard, especially from Southern California where Sacramento.
Absolutely, and we have so much competing factions here, alcohol, the wine lobby, cannabis, the hospitality industry, some want it, some want nothing to do with it. Wine country, we've had this ongoing, beefs in wine country about cannabis and getting cannabis into certain, really kind of wine centric regions. I mean, you got to play the long game here. But again, these are issues that the industry has been facing, essentially since regulation started.
Yeah. And that's just nothing of the fact that cities, towns, and counties in California have enormous sway of what happens in those cities, towns, and counties.
Yeah. I mean, California, when we wrote our bill to legalize recreation, adult sales, we pretty much gave local power. A lot of states do not do that. I think they've kind of seen what has transpired here in California and what obstacles, municipalities can be when we're talking about opting in and opting out of cannabis programs in general, let alone retail. We're talking about just having a cannabis business in your city. I think we are still over 50% of municipalities throughout the state do not allow cannabis businesses and retail, which is, if you look at voting trends, this is essentially going against the spirit of voters. There's no doubt about that.
Absolutely. And we even see it in many more conservative places than California. We see even in Florida, it's polling at over 60%. Yep. Other places, it's polling even better. Nationally, it's polling even better. But California, I think, is a bellwether of where the industry is. And certainly we are dealing with choppy waters, but even getting the governor to sign a bill that he vetoed last year or didn't sign last year seems to be progress, even if it seems slow and tedious. I want to ask you about something else that I saw on your site and have seen mentioned on MJ Biz, which is this business survey this year. And I think it's an annual thing. Talk a little bit about that, and I'll put up how people can actually find it and take the survey.
Yes, thank you for doing that, Jay. So basically, every year we do this DEI report, kind of a state of the industry, kind of where folks are at. We look at demographic information, try to draw, some inferences, data polls on who is running companies. Are we seeing, good representation from minority groups? Are we seeing, certain hiring trends? So we work on this every single year. We have a survey right now up that I see scrolling across the bottom of the screen. So please, if you're in the industry, please go to our survey. We want to learn from you. You are the ones providing us, internal information on your just hiring practices, how many folks you're hiring, why you're hiring, maybe some light demographic information. But it's just important for us to get, as many folks and many operators in the survey as possible, because, our job is to really kind of report what is happening in the industry. And we always need industry feedback to make that happen.
Absolutely. And we appreciate that. And we'll put that in the show notes as well as people come to this program, not only in real time right now, but also come afterwards too. We'll put a link there. And that is all to say that we are a couple months out now. What are we looking at? October 4th in, November, December, 2 months. We'll be in Las Vegas for MJBizCon, the annual gathering in Las Vegas. We'll put a note about how to get there as well. But I'm looking forward to that. And it's always timely. It's always sort of the industry gathering, but it also comes on the heels, literally on the heels. I think the hearing about rescheduling is happening on December 2nd. I think my flight is December 3rd into Las Vegas. So it's going to be a busy days for cannabis chatter. But what better way to do it than to be on the floor at MJBizCon?
And of course, it'll be, less than a month out from the elections. And we all know what that could possibly mean. Not even talking about the presidential side. I'm just talking strictly weed referendums, ballot referendums. Of course, we have the monster in Florida, which, could light up, probably the second largest market overnight, because, New York is just not materialized as fast as many of us had hoped and expected. Yeah.
Well, so we talked to Chris Roberts about he actually last time he came on, he had a good report about cannabis sales in New York. So we should make sure we mention that. And if the ballot measure passes in Florida the first week in November, I guess we can have maybe Trulieve throw a big party in Las Vegas. It'll they'll still be partying from the election.
Yes, there's no doubt that they've put 93 million eggs in this basket at least, and probably counting. They are by far the primary bankroller for the legalization effort. And I think just last week they kicked in another 5 million. And today we just wrote about they're actually defamation. They filed a defamation lawsuit against the Florida GOP and a couple of TV news stations for running some, quote unquote deceptive ads that are targeting voters, and their argument misleading them on what Amendment 3 is and can be.
Yeah, we've talked about it in the newsletter and talked about this program too, that it is really pulling apart the Republican Party in Florida, where you have young Republicans and Donald Trump on one side, you have the governor and let's say they're not old Republicans, but older Republicans that are not named young Republicans on the other side. And it really has become quite the pitched battle down there. My sense is that pitched battle reflects how close the election is going to be, and that it is very close to that 60% threshold. So we will see that maybe.
From all, from all reports on the ground, folks are certainly optimistic that it's going to surpass that 60% threshold. It is very rare, to pass that 60% threshold, but there are, some examples in cannabis ballot referendums that did just that. And I think it's going to bring a lot of people to the polls. Florida also has a referendum protecting women's reproductive rights. So it's going to be an interesting night in Florida and across the country for sure.
Absolutely, Chris. We'll probably have you on before then, but we'll definitely have you on after that. We will also see you in Las Vegas. Chris Casacchia, thanks for joining us here today for Reporter's Notebook.
Thanks for having me on, Jay. I always enjoy my time with you, man.
You got it. It's great. We will see everybody back here on Monday at 10 a.m. Eastern. I guess it's 7 a.m. your time, Chris. But thanks for being with us today. Everybody have a good and safe weekend.